to Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with the brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and with 4 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Moby Grape'S Bob Mosley, along with our special guest, Bob Mosley. This episode is part of a series called Grape Expectations, a Rashomon-style overview of the band Moby Grape. Not only are they one of the all-time best, but there is no crazier story in the history of music than that of the Grape. It includes disastrous tours, lawsuits, police busts, horribly nefarious managers, a fake touring version of the band, mysterious black magic witches, drug-induced madness, insane asylums, and attempted murder with an axe. And no joke, that's just within the band's first 2 years. There will be separate interviews with all 3 living members of the band, Peter Lewis, Don Stevenson, and Bob Mosley, plus an epic interview with band biographer Cam Cobb on the great Skip Spence, and some surprise guests. The only way to hear the entirety of Grape Expectations is to visit patreon.com/discograffiti and subscribe at the major tier. If you don't want to subscribe, you can either click on the Collections tab and simply purchase the whole series, or even get them piecemeal. But the public episodes have been edited down for time, plus the Monday bonus episodes, which is half the series, aren't being aired publicly in full. So if you're a Grape fan, trust me, you'll want to get over to Patreon lickety-split. And away we go then! Today's guest is one of the founding members of Moby Grape, a band whose debut record is commonly considered one of the best, if not the all-time best, debut albums ever released. I would also say that, tied with Badfinger, theirs is the most tragic and harrowing story in rock history. And yet, in the end, it's the music that makes it a story worth telling in the first place. A crucial component of San Francisco's psychedelic music scene during the period leading up to the Summer of Love, the Grape merged elements of rock and roll, folk music, pop, blues, and country, and were one of the few groups who could boast that all members were both vocalists and songwriters. In addition, while almost every band that came out of the Frisco scene were busy stretching out song lengths to ludicrously epic lengths, the Grape were all about tightness and concision. This man not only sang and provided bass for him, he also wrote a number of classics for him too, including Mr. Blues, Come in the Morning, Lazy Me, Bitter Wind, Rose-Colored Eyes, It's a Beautiful Day Today, and Gypsy Wedding. After leaving the Grape for the first time, he released his 1972 self-titled solo debut. The following year, he formed the Darrow Mosley Band with Chris Darrow of Kaleidoscope, who issued one recording, Desert Rain. In 1977, he played in a supergroup bar band called the Ducks, with Neil Young, the great Jeff Blackburn, and John Craviotto, which had a brief life that summer. 1986 brought Wine and Roses. In 1989, there was Mosley Grape live at the Indigo Ranch. Never Dreamed came in 1999, and just last year came the re-release of True Blue. Since being hipped to his existence 30 years ago, whilst quite aptly living on the hate myself, I've been in absolute awe of both his talent and his ability to interpret raw experience, which allows him to be the most important thing imaginable, a survivor. Lads and ladies, come in the morning when the sun is shining, bring him a dream with the sunbeams climbing. It's Bob Mosley!
Hey, how you doing, David?
Just hearing myself say all those words, I can't believe what a life of accomplishments you have. And that doesn't even go into your life in the Misfits in 1962. I mean, you started a rock and roll band before most rock and roll bands even existed.
Right. Yeah, the Misfits were a great band.
Yeah, so tell me, I mean, before the Grape were around, Tell me, please, first, the years that you spent with the Misfits. Tell me what that was like.
The Beatles got us started in 64. I had the band before that, but we weren't playing clubs. We didn't start until the Beatles came out, and then we started getting club gigs.
Because you were too young.
I was too young. I was 19.
Okay. And so when things first started I know that you actually, while you were in the Joel Scott Hill trio, you wound up crossing paths with Jerry Miller and Don Stevenson from The Grape, and you wound up in the Frantics for a month playing in a Chinese restaurant.
Right.
Tell me about that, because that's a pocket of Moby Grape history that there's not a lot of documentation about.
Well, Chuck Edwards was the organ player. Jerry Miller was a guitar player, and Don Stevenson was the drummer. We had Bob Hoskell on sax, but he left the group right away. We had Eve, who was our go-go girl, and we played 5 sets a night to a crowd of people that were come through the alley in Chinatown, and we played cover tunes.
And then you were in that group for about a month. And somehow, in between that and Moby Grape, you were actually in the Vegetables as well, right?
Right.
Your history is so extensive, it's unreal. Was it with the Misfits that you wound up doing demos under Sly Stone's production hand?
Yeah.
What was that like? He wasn't yet, the Sly Stone of legend, right?
No, he was a disc jockey.
Yeah.
And he took us to his house in Oakland and showed us around his room downstairs in his parents' house. And it was wall-to-wall albums, record albums. And he played me a Sugar Cane Harris album. The first time I heard Sugar Cane Harris, and it blew my mind.
Wow. What would you say would wound up? I mean, you're known, obviously, even though you have a number of what I would consider to be just heart-exploding ballads. Some of the best ballads the Grape ever did were from you, I think. You're known for that blast of a voice. I mean, Mr. Blues, it feels to me like your vocal on that is like a wild animal throwing itself up against the cage of a song. So where did you wind up getting most of your influence from? That crazy voice, how did you know that you had such a wild instrument at your disposal?
Well, when we were in the Misfits playing street dances out of the back of a pickup truck with a generator, street dances, and I didn't have a microphone, so I started screaming out the lyrics to Little Richard and Bobby Bland and Chuck Berry and all those guys, just screaming out the lyrics.
Wow. So it was really just to kind of reach the back row, and it was the product of invention and necessity, right?
Right.
That's amazing. So do you remember around what year that was, roundabout?
Yeah, 1962.
Oh, my God. So at the beginning of your career, you're singing like this?
Yeah.
That is wild. People must have been watching you with their jaws down by their chests.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of white guys singing like that at that time.
No.
Wow.
We opened for the Stones.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that was like 64, 65, right?
64.
Okay, that's incredible. Any memories about crossing paths with any of those guys in any kind of Sugarcane Harris-like way?
Yeah, I played the bass player. He played his bass.
Bill Wyman?
Yeah, Bill Wyman backstage. And I played his bass and he played mine.
That's so cool. So, something that I brought up in the intro about, your story being such a wild and harrowing story, I brought it up for a reason because I know you've probably had a bunch of interviews where people focus only on your first record. It's a great record. There's no doubting it's an incredible record. I love all the music you guys have ever done. So when I mention that it's this harrowing story, it's contextually inside of this tale that just happens to be a very difficult trudging through to get to the goal at the end of the road. When you think of everything that you've been through in the context of the band, does it feel like an albatross? Does it feel like it was all worth it for the music? How do you feel about the whole thing, with Kate's and just everything you were forced through to remain Moby Grape?
Well, the fans still remain.
Yeah.
Like I talked to Neil about it a couple of times, and he loved Moby Grape. And so did a lot of the Doobie Brothers, Tom Johnson, Pat Simmons. They liked Moby Grape.
If it wasn't for Moby Grape, there'd probably be no Doobie Brothers, right?
No, that's true.
And didn't Skippy name them?
Yeah.
All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's Patreon episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/Discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 4 weekly episodes. That's Friday's free episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound episode, which showcases Patreon members and the Elephant Six world, your Monday bonus episode, and your Wednesday early release ad-free super extended director's cut of that Friday's show. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/Discograffiti.